Welcome back to C#.NET Tutorials. I'm Venkat. In this video, let us learn what are nullable reference types in C#. So here, by default, value types are non-nullable. Reference types are nullable. So nullable is nothing but accepts both null and non-null. And non-nullable meaning accepts only non-null values. Okay, value types accepts not nullable values by default. If you want to store null values inside value types, you need to use question mark. Okay, but when it comes to the reference types, by default reference types accepts both null values and not null values. Okay, but there is a new feature added in C# that is nullable reference types. With that feature, C# compiler thinks that reference types also non-nullable. Okay, reference types also non-nullable. So it will accept only non-null values. It will accept only non-null values. Okay, but this one is newly added feature. That's why it is not showing the error directly, but it is showing the warning. Here you can see. So there is a warning. String is a reference type and it should accept values and nulls. But here when we are assigning null value, you can see there is a warning saying converting null literal or possible null value to a non-nullable type. It is saying string is a non-nullable type. So as we discussed, it is saying, compiler is saying string is a non-nullable type. That is because of the newly added feature in C#. Okay, what happens with that feature? So what happens with that newly added feature? Why that is added? Let us look at that. Okay. So this is the documentation for that. Okay, these guys are saying these are the three different reasons for adding this nullable reference types feature in C#. Okay. Okay, for improving the static flow analysis that determines if a variable might be null before determining it. So if you want to say whether a variable is null or not null before running it, that means if you want to determine a variable is a nullable or non-nullable at the compile time, so we can use this particular feature. Attributes that annotate APIs so that the flow analysis determines null state. This is very much important when we are writing web API services. When we are writing API services, we are using string as a parameter. The compiler doesn't know whether it is a nullable or not nullable, so that it cannot put restrictions on the consumer end. Okay, so if compiler knows that a string is a not nullable type, then it will put restriction on the consuming end. That is, so consumer must and should pass that value. Okay, this is very much useful in service-based applications. Variable annotations that developers use to explicitly declare the intended null state for a variable. So if a developer thinks that in the lifetime of a particular variable, this should not go null, so in that case developers will intentionally mark that as a not nullable or nullable variable. So for these three different reasons, Microsoft added this feature, but you can disable or enable this feature in your project. Okay, so if you want to use all these advantages, you can enable this feature. If you don't want, this feature, if you want to use as the old way, you can disable this particular feature. So let us see how we can enable or disable this feature in our project. So let's go to our project and go to Solution Explorer, double click on your project, and you can see there is a property in your project file. So that is nullable property. So if this nullable property is enabled, then this nullable reference types feature is enabled in your project. If this one is disabled, then this feature is disabled in your project. Okay. So when this is enabled, you can see there is a warning showing you are assigning null to non-nullable type. That means compiler is considering this string as a not nullable type. Let me disable this. Disable. Disable. I have saved it. And now you can see the warning is gone. That means compiler is considering string as a nullable and not nullable type, because this is a reference type. Reference types allows both null and not nulls, right? And if you want to keep that feature, if you want to keep this enabled and you want to define your variable as a nullable or not nullable, so now there is no question mark here. Okay. So when there is no question mark, it is giving warning. That means this is a not nullable type, but you are assigning null value. Okay. If you want to avoid that warning, you can make it question mark. That means this is nullable type. So developer is explicitly marking this variable as a nullable reference type. That means it can have values as null and not null values. Suppose you are defining a message, string message equal to hello world. That's the message. Console.WriteLine of message. If you want to write, integer length message.length. So here you can see I am printing the length here. I am trying to calculate the length of this message. I am trying to calculate the length of this message, right? So this message can be null or cannot be null. Okay. When we are referencing this message to identify the length, so if this is not null, then your program will run successfully. But if there is a null value, okay, if there is a null value coming from DB or external sources, so you are trying to calculate the length of null. Here you can see the moment you are seeing the warning. So dereference of a possible null reference. So here you are assigning a null value and you are trying to calculate length on top of this one. Okay. So here you can say question mark. Okay. The warning is gone, and when you want to check the length of it, you can check it with question mark dot length. And here you are getting it as a, so this length can have value or null, right? So this one also you need to make it null. Okay. So that's how we can use the nullable reference types. We can use this nullable reference types in classes and other areas also, but we haven't discussed classes and others. So for now, this is enough. In the upcoming videos, we are going to discuss it deeply. And that's about the nullable reference types for now. For more videos like this, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.